And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of helping to protect the food supply, producing wonderful, awesome products for everybody to eat. And if nobody says it, Cara and I are going to tell you right now, good job. We're really proud of you. You did a good job this week. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you're new to this is the Food Safety Chat, and my name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group. Welcome. Pull up a chair. What we do here every week at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on Fridays on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, is we do a live stream, and we talk about all things food safety. And one of the things that you're going to notice with the chat here is that this is not a presentation. This is not us lecturing you and telling you all the things that you need to do and reading through boring regulations and things like this. This is a conversation. This is meant to be interactive. This is meant to be a discussion. And it's amazing because I get to bring on super cool guests every week and talk about all things food safety. And this week, I'm very happy. If you're a regular on the chat, you know Cara, and she's always a great guest. So Cara Mikkelson with ChemStation, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. I always say this is just such a great thing, and I'm just so honored to be asked to be able to present here, to have our little chat, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of one of those things where it's something that's really important. I think this applies to pretty much any career, right? Is to be able to take the information that we've collected through our careers and then hand that down to the next group of people coming up, so that hopefully, right, they can prevent and not go through the same mistakes that we went through, and they can come up with their own mistakes. And so hopefully they can avoid those.
I love that. Come up with their own mistakes.
That's right. Copy ours. We already screwed up stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, that's so funny that you say that, because I know for me, just not that long ago, somebody said, how did you know that? Like, where did you read that? It's like, I didn't read it anywhere. I learned it slopping through, some plant at midnight, most likely. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely
just how it is, right?
Absolutely. And so part of what's one of the things that's great about this community of people that we're building here is you're seeing some people here are doing what we love to do on the chat, is we're all saying hello to each other in the morning and let us knowing where you're at. So Claire and Tim are here. And so Tim's been posting some really cool pictures on LinkedIn. So he was up tromping around at a plant, speaking of that, right? Showing snowdrifts and tumbleweeds at the same time. So that was pretty humorous. So I am in Loveland, Colorado. And Cara, you are not in your normal place here. So where are you at?
I am not. I am in the fabulous community of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Still in Wisconsin.
And I'm sure everybody's going to notice here, but there we go, this way, is all the amazing letters on the wall. So we were talking about who owns those.
Yeah, so those are my dad's high school letters. So it's been quite some time. I don't know what year he graduated. I can't remember, but in the 50s sometime. So he has kept his letters.
Well, and you can see even the pins on there, right? There's a basketball, a football. Right? So he not only lettered, he lettered in multiple sports.
Yes,
so
he did.
Dad was an awesome athlete.
Yeah, so pretty impressive. Yeah, I did not, unfortunately, get his athletic ability. Which is okay, because I got his brains.
There you go. So one of the things that we do here on the chat, guys, is we have a ceremonial drink of your favorite beverage. So here's my coffee. And what cool mug you got today? It's just
I have a Nordic mug. We're Norwegian by heritage, and so almost everything here is Norwegian. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. I've been to Oslo, but that's the only city I've been to in Norway. But Oslo's a beautiful city.
Yes, yeah. I've only been there one time, very briefly. I did an exchange as a high school student for a summer, and I lived in Molde, which is kind of on the coast, the west coast, in the fjords. It's beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to go back. Someday I will. There
you go. Yeah, traveling it's an amazing thing in that you get out of your bubble, you get to experience the world from another viewpoint, because we think that how we're experiencing things like this in the US are how things are around the world. Not even close. Right. Not even close. Right. And so you get to another country, you're watching the local TV, these type of things when you're in your hotel room or whatever, and there's no mention of what's going on in the US, right? We think we're the center of the world, and there's so much more going on out there than we realize.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And it's so I love to travel, and I travel a lot for work, but travel for fun is just amazing too. So.
Yeah, I've been to all the states but one. Haven't been to Alaska. Been to 33 countries, somewhere around there.
Wow. Holy smokes. You've been doing a lot. So that's
yeah, that's kind of our hobby. So here next year, we're planning out a trip. We're going to Tasmania. So that'll be fun.
Nice. Oh my gosh. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So
Wow.
maybe
I don't think it'd fit in your carry-on.
maybe I'll be able to figure out a way to do the chat remote. That'd be awesome.
You should. That would be amazing. Maybe you could find a local food safety person in Tasmania.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there are some cheese plants there.
Yeah.
So we had a cheese plant. Was it Bond Grain Cheese had a plant in Tasmania?
Very cool. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? So,
yeah, we get a business trip. There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
Why not?
Very cool.
So let's kind of think about our topic here for today. So recently, Kara, you guys had a very successful seminar, and tell everybody a little bit about that.
Sure, I'd love to tell you about it. And I believe some of the people that are on the chat maybe were at it. We had our annual ChemStation Institute foods, and it's our Food Safety and Sanitation Summit. And it's a 2-day event where we talk about sanitation activities, and we talk about food safety, and we had some really awesome speakers come in, Yvonne Masters and Deb Kane and Neil Bogart and Paul Schacht. So it was really just an awesome event, and we did a workshop, and one of the things that we did was my coworker Joel Schaefer and I presented on the top 5 misses in food safety audits as far as sanitation, at least what we see, right, as a sanitation chemical provider. And we put this presentation together, and I thought, you know what, it would be fun to present it to the chat. So that's kind of where we're going to go with this.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And so one of the things too, right? So anybody who works in quality, this is really important. This is something I used to teach my quality managers as well, is that your chemical company and who's providing your chemicals, super, super important. And if all they're doing is rolling chemicals into your plant and not providing any support, go find somebody else, because really what you're purchasing with companies in ChemStation, I think, is really good at this, is you're buying expertise, right? You're getting access to people like Cara and other people who can help you, because the chemicals are just part of the process. It's how do you clean? It's flow, time, pressure, GPMs, spray patterns, all these. I mean, one time I had a course that we were going through, and there was a whole module just on CIP spray balls and how the different spray balls work. And it's just like, holy moly. And so it's really important that you have a good partner in this space. And I think that, presentations like this that ChemStation does are showing that contribution to food safety out there. So thanks for doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's like you're saying, and we talk about like tribal knowledge, you and I have learned through digging around plants at 2:00 in the morning. You don't learn that when you are in an academic setting necessarily. You learn the basics, right? And then the applicable format of it is getting out there and actually crawling under those blenders.
Yep, and exactly right. And it's always a good thing to remember is equipment and chemicals don't produce food, people do. And so if the people aren't controlling the process and understanding the processes, you're going to fail. So you have to develop that knowledge base. And so that's kind of what we're going to get in here today as well. So we're going to be going through five different areas of different lessons learned, and we'll dive into these. And if we have time at the end, we're also going to go into a bonus topic as well. So make sure and stick to the end, and then we'll talk about that bonus topic as well. So this first one for me, I think is super important. A disorganized plant. Oh my goodness, that is such a bad thing, isn't it, Cara?
It is. When you walk into a facility, and if you see hoses everywhere and squeegees laying on the floor or brooms laying on the floor, you just know it's going to be a long day, right? You know it's going to be a very long day.
Well, I mean, just think about it from your personal life. And, so we have the holidays coming up. And let's say that you're hosting Thanksgiving for your family. Right? You spend a lot of time before that meal getting your house nice and clean and making sure everything is dusted and all of these type of good things. You wouldn't just let your house, it's like, nah, it's good enough, right? It's
Right.
all part of that package. And that first impression, right? So as an auditor or a visitor or anybody who's going to that plant, FDA, USDA, it doesn't matter. As soon as they drive into that property, they are evaluating you. And one of the things, Cara, that I would do if I was going and auditing a plant or helping them out with a gap assessment or something, is I drive around the outside.
Yep.
And I'm doing a couple of things. I'm looking for that cleanliness. I'm saying, okay, do they have a boneyard?
Boneyards. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a stack of cigarette butts outside behind the maintenance shop? What does the grounds around the outside look? Are they kept? Have they been mowed? Are the sides of the building clean? Is the paint kept up? All of these type of things. And a lot of times too, I'm also looking at this from a biosecurity standpoint. Are there doors propped open? Are there people milling around outside? Where do the employees park? How do all of these things work? I'm also looking to see if I see people outside, are they looking at me and saying, who's that? Right. And say, hi, can I help you? Anything like that. Or are they just ignoring me and saying, nah, yeah, whatever. These are all training things. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more too. But that first impression is critical, right? So then I go to the front door. And if I'm visiting a plant on a Monday, let's say, and I arrive the day before on a Sunday, I'm sure you do this too, is I'll visit ahead of time. I'll do a quick check, and I'll do it like Rod Wheeler talks about. I'll go maybe in the afternoon or night to see what's going on, right? Just to kind of poke around. Absolutely. And that next day or these type of things too, Cara, when you're going in, that first impression, okay, so I go to the front door and I hit the buzzer. Does anybody answer? Do they make me wait for 10 minutes? What's going on there?
Right.
And then that whole process of introduction to the facility, super important. And so many times, especially with budget cuts and everything else, it's like, okay, well, we used to have a receptionist. Now we don't. Okay, we'll just put a sign up here and tell them to wait for somebody to come get them. Okay, that's fine. But how are you introduced them? And so I think really this all falls onto that disorganization piece. How are you presenting yourself? Are you wearing a nice button-down shirt? Are you professional? Are you coming in looking like you know what you're doing? And that applies to your plant.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head too. When you drive up, if you see, and I always use this example, but you see a giant puddle in the parking lot, and there's a herd of ducks. I don't know what is it, a flock of ducks, I guess. A herd. A bunch of wildlife. That's going to be a problem. And I love your example about walking around the outside. I actually had an example where I was walking around the outside and I noticed a grill next to a loading dock door. And I was like, why is there a grill next to the loading dock door? And this was in Wisconsin. And they said, oh, well, in the summertime, this is in the winter, in the summertime, we have grill outs for the employees on Fridays, which is fabulous, right? You want to encourage that. And I said, well, this might not be the best location for this type of equipment. And sure enough, we opened it up and it was infested with mice and just tons of nests. And it's not my favorite thing. Snakes are like no go. Like if there would have been snakes in there, I would have been in the car out the door. But this was, I was like, well, we may want to remove this from this location, just given the proximity to the plant. So and right there, I knew, I was like, I wonder.
Yeah, and if there are outbuildings, a lot of times those are where they hide stuff. So it's like, oh, look at that old shed over there. I'm making a beeline for that. I'm going to see what's going on in that shed. because if you have those harborage areas, right? So for every mouse you see, there's probably 10 or 20 that you can't. And all of that evidence is showing you that those little guys are probably going to be coming into your plant.
Yep, exactly. And even, if you have a good pest control, they're probably not going to get in, but why tempt fate? Why make it, let's make it easier to not have that type of incident happen, right? And let's just remove the situation, right? So yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, kind of getting the lay of the land. Here's another little tip on that too: is when you're going to visit or things like this, I'll go to Google Maps and I'll go check out the plant and look at the aerial view and say, oh, that's kind of interesting. And you can kind of see how the plant is put together, because especially in dairy and things like this that we work in a lot, is plants generally just don't spring up and you have a complete plant and everybody's like, oh, okay, that's all done. Nope. Plants kind of develop over time. So you have a small little building where they're making some cheese and they start doing, good sales, and they add on to it. And then the warehouse is too small and they add on to that. And you end up with this hodgepodge of buildings that are all linked together. And understanding that in your mind when you're going into these plants is really valuable, because sometimes they will guide you away from areas that you don't want to see. And so if you have that internal map, you're like, no, I want to kind of go over this way and see what's over here, right?
Yeah.
And so getting an understanding of that is super important.
And I actually got that tip from you from coming on one of these chats. I remember you talked about this, and I was like, that's a fabulous idea. I never thought to do that before. So I thought that was just a great idea to just get your head around it too.
Yeah, well, and think about this too, right? If you're looking at an overhead view of a plant on Google Maps, and you look at the roof, and it's this nice white roof with brand new sealant, and you can tell it's in pristine shape. You're like, oh, okay, good. Taking care of their roof, that's a good sign. No water infiltration, no potential issues. Looking really good. Versus a roof that's all moldy, and you can see big puddles of water on the roof, and you're like,
yeah.
Because
I don't know about you, but I've been asked to walk on roofs, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not going there.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, we laid down some planks of wood here on the roof. Walk on those.
Don't step off those.
Yeah. Right. And it's just crazy. And so one of the things too that we were talking about too, in kind of the general appearance of the plant is, and you'll notice this too with good auditors and good inspectors or things like this, they're not just doing this car. When they're walking around with you, they're doing this.
Yep, exactly.
They're looking everywhere, because part of it too, right? And this is human nature, and we've talked about this before. Is this is if we're walking, this is how we generally do it. And if we're the quality manager in the plant, we're heading to the meeting and we're thinking about what we're going to talk about in the meeting and what were the complaints last week, and we're in our own little head, and we're not looking around, right? We're not seeing the pile of crud over by the machine, or we're not seeing that piece of equipment that has that temporary repair that's been there for the last 6 months with duct tape and plastic and God knows what. We just don't see it because we're not looking. Yeah. And then that auditor who's doing this is like, what's that? Oh, yeah. Right. So you have to kind of get out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah. And it just becomes routine, right? And it's no fault of anyone. It's just, and that's why I always say with internal audits, sometimes it's nice to bring in the maintenance personnel to take a look around, because they look at it in a totally different way than a line supervisor or a sanitation supervisor or a quality supervisor. So
I mean, human beings are people of habit, and we develop habits. Everybody does it. It's just part of who we are because it's efficient. It's like, imagine every morning that you had to hunt for your toothbrush, right? Nope, you know exactly where it is. It's sitting by the sink. It's on the right-hand side in that little holder. And you kind of stumble in the bathroom in the morning and you get your toothbrush, and it's automatic. And that's good, but you also have to be wary of it when you're thinking about what we're talking about here today.
Exactly. And I thought, and bringing up maintenance, I thought in our pre-show talk, we were talking about the maintenance areas, the maintenance shop. And I think that was another one where, and I was telling you that I actually had an experience where we were prepping for a BRC audit and the maintenance shop was a nightmare. It like none of the tools matched, nothing was organized. And the owner actually came in there and said, done. All of it gone, and just started over. And fortunately, they had the financial ability to do that rather than spending the time to try and organize it. But yeah, he pitched everything. And when I came back, it was immaculate. So it was, but the maintenance personnel were like, this is so much easier. We can find things, and when we know how it was clean, it was just an amazing turnabout for them. So.
And that is, so anyone who knows plants knows that the maintenance area is one of the toughest nuts to crack, to get that clean and organized, because a lot of times, right, wrong, or indifferent, and this is something you have to fight through as a quality manager. I'm just the electrician. I'm just here to work on the wiring, and I'm not part of this whole food safety stuff. Yeah, you are.
Yep, you sure are.
You are. And you are part of the team, and here's the things that you need to do, right? And contractors, oh my goodness, that's a whole nother discussion. But there's nothing more impressive than walking into a clean maintenance shop. Number one, it's good for food safety because those metal shavings that are on the floor are going to get tracked around the plant, 100% guaranteed. Exactly. Those little birds are going to stick in your shoe, and they're going to get tracked around. Where are they going to end up? Ooh, right? So tools are put away. The floor is clean. And as a bonus, when you sit down to talk with the maintenance manager, what does his office look like, right? Is it pile high with catalogs for ordering stuff and tech manuals and things like this?
Work orders.
And when you look at the PM program, is there a dedicated person who's responsible for preventive maintenance? And they have a PM program that they're using. And they sit you down in front of their computer in hopefully their office, right? And just not a computer that's sitting on a bench somewhere. And they walk you through the whole PM program. And when they show you, they're proud of it, right? And all the different things that they're doing. And that maintenance shop piece of it, oh my goodness, right, is so important. And so in bigger plants too, this is part of this as well, too, Cara, is you'll have the main maintenance shop, and then you'll have satellite maintenance shops. And a lot of times those satellite maintenance shops are a good place to look too, because they become catch-alls for everything.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Well, and one thing with this shop that they redid, the maintenance manager is like, I'm more efficient. I'm more efficient because I can find things, and just his work became easier because of that. And so he could focus on other things, right? So he was able to focus on other things that could, benefit the food safety.
And that's a really good point, because I want to emphasize that as well. Is one of the things that we find in quality all the time is like, okay, we need to create a procedure for this. We need to create a work instruction. And a lot of times people roll their eyes and go, oh, this is just going to make things. No, it makes things easier. It makes it quicker. People understand what they need to do. And if you don't have processes in place, people think that it's faster, but it's absolutely the opposite.
Exactly. And that kind of leads into the next one. I believe the next topic was documentation, right? Was it?
Yes, pre-op inspections. Oh my goodness, right? I remember I had at a previous plant a third shift QA person who was there when the plant was doing sanitation. And she worked really closely with them and things like this. And at the end of the night, if she didn't give the okay on the equipment cleaning, they had to redo it. And she just didn't do a visual inspection. She would walk around, and because she was with sanitation, she knew where they were fighting things. She knew where the trouble areas were, and she would actively tear down equipment. Now, she would bring a maintenance person and sanitation person with her during the pre-op inspections in the morning. And she'd say, okay, tear that pump plate off. I want to look inside that pump.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that is great. And using not only visual, but all your senses, right? All of them. Make sure you use all of them.
And you made a very good point is, look underneath, get that flashlight, right? Like the old AIB audits, right? Where, they're looking everywhere. And to your point, smell. It's like, if you walk in, your nose, I mean, it's just like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh,
and I remember one time I was walking around a meat processing plant, and I walked by just an area and I was like, this doesn't smell right. There's something's funky in this area. And they're like, you think? And it's like, well, it doesn't smell. And sure enough, they popped off a piece of it. And it had just gathered some product in there that obviously had been there for some time. And it was rotten and it was just awful. Ugh, it was just awful. So, but it was just as simple as that. It didn't take much for me to find that. And I'm sure they just had gotten used to that rancid smell. So.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it just kind of fades into the background,
right?
And you get desensitized to it. And I kind of describe this. The phrase I use for these type of things that we're talking about here is fresh eyes. Right?
Yes.
It's not that we're some geniuses coming in there with these amazing abilities to see things and smell. No, we're just new people who are doing this, right? Because we don't know. We're not in that environment all the time.
Exactly. And I think that's a great point, right? That is an awesome point it doesn't take decades and decades of experience. That helps, obviously, but just that fresh set of eyes. And you can do that internally. Even you pull in your HR manager or something like that, make sure you train them on GMPs, but then getting them out there just to take that fresh look. It doesn't hurt. So.
It's amazing because part of this too, right, is essentially what you're doing is you're operating the same way FDA would, right? Because they're fresh audits coming into the plant. So you're trying to mimic what they would do. Yeah. Part of this, and we've talked about this on the chat before, is foreign material. And every year in and year out, foreign material is in the top 3. And you and I hear this all the time. I say, I've got a metal detector. I'm fine. More than half of foreign material recalls are for non-metallic issues. Rubber, gaskets, plexiglass, all these types of things. And you need to be checking for this stuff. And that pre-op inspection goes in exactly to what we're talking about here, is where are these things? Now, part of this, and I kind of rail against this with kind of the GFSI standards relative to looking at these foreign material things, because they have you tracking some stupid stuff, in my opinion. It's like, there's a clock hanging in the production area over on a wall 80 feet away from production. I'm going to put that on my plastic list. Oh, come on, really? Even if it fell on the floor and broke, number one, people are going to notice it, right? It's not going to make it into the product. Is that really value added? No, it's not. I mean, reasonably likely to occur is a phrase that should be really drilled into your head relative to that. What should you be focusing on relative to these pre-op inspections is, okay, great. Where are the areas where things can fall into product? So think, for example, a packaging line, right? And you have a conveyor belt going along, and you got all this stuff all around it, and the product's on the belt going down. What above that can fall on that product?
Exactly.
And when you start looking at these things, Cara, oh my goodness, teeny little bolts and zip ties that are holding wires up and all of these type of things. And you start doing this and looking around, and you're like, oh my goodness.
There's plenty of opportunity, right?
Those are the things.
And I think too, one thing that often gets overlooked that I've heard several incidences of are tools. So people will put their tool down on top of a metal detector or on top of a blender, or they not thinking, right? We set things down. You set your pen down, and then you're like, where'd that go? Tools. And those can, if you have a tool that's like a scraper or something like that, put it on top of something, it shakes, boop, right into the mixer. So making sure that you identify that too as an opportunity, right?
And it goes back to the maintenance piece, right? So you have the maintenance shop, you have satellite maintenance areas, and then you also have at that next level, a lot of times little toolkits that maintenance may have, little portable trolleys they're pushing around, and the operators too will have their own little set of tools. What are in those toolkits? Because part of this as well, and this is clearly defined in the standards, right? SQF as well, is wood handled tools, handled with the rubber grippy things. How do you clean those? And
right? Yeah.
unapproved lubricants. Oh my goodness, all these type of things.
Yeah. Well, and I like tools. And this, one example too is I went into a facility where where the operator was having trouble. Things will get jammed up. So what did he do? He took a broom handle, removed the broom, added a brush with duct tape, and duct taped it onto that, and that's what he was using to unjam the machine. Right. That to me, bristles, metal, wood. I mean, you got the perfect trifecta there for a foreign material recall. And it's one of those where ask him, okay, what do you need to perform better? And then we can get you the proper tool that we can properly sanitize, that we can properly take inventory of, and make your job easier, right?
Yeah, that person is doing that for a reason.
Exactly.
They're trying to be more efficient, and they've created a workaround for a situation that shouldn't exist. That should be a giant red flag.
Yes.
Nancy had a good one here too. Thermometers. Oh my goodness, thermometers. Yes, right?
Yep, thermometers. They're necessary, but you got to keep track of those.
A big one for me that needs to be on that pre-op are those plexiglass shields around the machine. Because all day long, operators, they're there for safety, which is good, but they're also in the way. So the operators are constantly opening and closing and slamming them shut and doing what they need to do. And they get broken, they get cracked. And I'm sure everybody can relate to this. I've been on many an audit where the auditor or FDA will look at a shield and say, excuse me, come here. Yeah, what's up? This plexiglass shield here by this bolt, there's a piece of plexiglass missing. Where is that?
Maybe in the ice cream that we made.
Because my metal detector will get that.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where these pre-op inspections become extremely important in your food safety plan for making sure that you don't get foreign material in your product. So if you have that checklist, right? So think of like a metal detector. If you have a hit on your metal detector, general procedure in most plants is you go back to the last good check and rerun all that product through again to make sure that everything was okay, and then you can move forward. Or if it kicks something off the line, you take it to the lab, and the lab chops it up and see, looking for what the metal detector found. It's the same with these pre-op inspections. You're only as good as the last good pre-op inspection. So if you're doing this every single day as part of your pre-op, that becomes your window of risk. So yesterday, that piece of plexiglass on that shield was there. Today, it's gone. Okay, now you at least have a window that you can operate inside. And say, okay, during this day, we ran at this time, this was missing at this point. Let me talk to the operators and see if they noticed anything. All that product's on hold. Let's send it out for x-ray. Let's see if we can find it or whatever. Because the last thing you want is a consumer saying, I bit down on this and broke my tooth, and who knows what. All those awful situations that happen with that.
Exactly. Well, and I think too, like one of the things with the pre-op inspection, just like what you're talking about, is how are you releasing the processing area, utilizing that pre-op inspection? What's your process to do that? And I see that a lot as a gap. It's like you're doing it, but let's say you do have a piece of plexiglass missing. How do you stop that from production continuing on? What's your release program to the production?
Well, and part of this too, I think the plants, I think all of us can do a better job on this and this kind of gets what Nancy's talking about with the thermometers and things like this, is emergency actions, right? So the line goes down and maintenance runs out to fix the line, and everything is down and people are standing around and maintenance is going, right, trying to fix this machine, and the operations guys is going, come on, we gotta get this going, we got orders to fill. And there's a strong pressure to just restart that line and go. Nope. Quality needs to be out there and say, okay, are all the tools accounted for? All the little pieces of wires that you guys were monkeying around with? Are all the bolts in place? Is everything ready to go? Did we, I don't know, re-clean and re-sanitize any areas that maintenance was working on?
Right.
And until someone in quality or sanitation does an inspection and says, yes, all right, this line is ready to go, you don't restart.
Right. Exactly. And I see that gap a lot where people just don't have that release program, right? And I know it's, and people are like, well, we did it. Well, but what's your procedure, right? How do you do that? And how do you do that formally so that we know that processing area is safe to manufacture?
You're such a pro, because this leads into our next one, which is documentation. Right? We've all heard this a million times.
I know the agenda.
Finish this statement, right? If it's not documented,
it's not done.
It doesn't happen, right? So you need to be able to tell the story, and it needs to be done in such a way that people who aren't involved with this can go back through that documentation and recreate what was done. So in our example that we just talked about, oh, well, we see here that the line went down between 11 and 1 o'clock. Okay, great. What happened? Well, this was the reason. Why did that happen? Okay, well, this piece of equipment broke. Okay, why did that happen? Well, it's because the PM program evidently wasn't correct, right? This bearing burned out and it caused this. Okay, great. Let's put some corrective actions in place with that, and then let's figure that out, right? It all comes back to the basics, right? Blocking and tackling, Cara. Plan, do, check, act. PDCA. I hammer on that all the time. What do you do? How do you know you did it? What do you do if things didn't go correct? And how do you get back on what you need to do? And one of the key things that I learned in this area too, and this is a little bonus for this as well, is if you have a work instruction that has more than one person responsible for a task, break it apart. Because if you have a task—
that's a great tip. Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah, because you'll go back, let's say there's an issue, Cara, and you go to investigate. What are they going to do? They're going to do this, right? I didn't do that. The other guy must have done it, and vice versa, right? You're going to be stuck. And you can't do an investigation associated with that because you're going to hit a dead end.
Right, exactly. No, that is a great tip. And that's what I love about these chats is I learned something every single time. And that's a great tip for just documentation in general, right? And I know, and I think this is where I always find you want to write the procedures in as much detail as possible, but people are always like, well, don't do too much detail because then the auditor is going to find gaps or problems and things like that. Well, just make sure, especially in sanitation, that anyone could follow that procedure and do it completely, right? And make sure that it's in enough detail to understand that actual procedure. Right. But I think people, they always say, don't paint yourself into a corner, don't get too detailed. But really, you got to have enough detail and I've seen procedures where it's like, dry, clean, soap it up, rinse it, sanitize it, release it. And it's like,
Right. And so here's something I learned on this side, and I agree with what you're saying, but part of this too is that documentation needs to be written in the context of the person performing the task. And what do I mean by that? If you have, for example, a position that's highly experienced, so let's say your pasteurizer operator in the plant, they've been doing this for 20 or 30 years, right? They're the most trusted individual. They're the person controlling your microbiological food safety. They have to know what they're doing. They are trained, they're experienced, they're certified. They don't need a super detailed work instruction because they already know what they're doing. And if they don't, and they're reading through those instructions, you're in a lot of trouble. Right. What they need to know is, what do you do if something goes wrong? What happens if the RTD isn't recording the temperature? What happens if the chart recorder isn't working correctly? What happens if the kickout for the return on the temperature doesn't work, right? Do they just go, and keep going? No, right? They need to escalate. Conversely, the other side of that, to your point, Cara, is the lower the level of experience. Think a temp or something like this in a plant. They need to know in this documentation exactly what to do. Step one, step two, step three. Exactly. And somebody needs to be watching them the entire time. Right. So the documentation needs to reflect these elements.
Yes. Well, and you bring up a good point in that they shouldn't not only know how, but the why, right?
Yes.
Understand why you're doing things and empower employees, just like you were saying, oh, that went wrong. Well, we'll just keep going. Empower them to say, nope, this went wrong. We need to stop. We need to evaluate, because if you keep going, what are the consequences, or what are the potential consequences of that? So,
yeah. I mean, the
recall, illness, outbreak. I mean, it could be anything. So.
And so a good rule of thumb on this, and this is, the numbers don't really matter, it's more the concept, right? Is that, and we've all heard this through like Joanne and so Dr. DeFeo and things like this, right? Is every step you go through that process. So think receiving, processing, packaging, shipping, every major step you go through in that plant increases your cost of non-quality tenfold. So
that's a great one. Yeah.
If you don't catch the crappy milk coming in the plant that makes the bad curd, which makes the shitty cheese, it's not going away. It's just getting worse.
It's going to keep going.
And worse. Right? And now that's out in the consumer's hands. Now it's, worst case scenario.
Oh yeah.
Catch it where it happens. Catch it where it happens. And your documentation is how you do that. And you have to be able then to show. And this is super important on your food safety side of the documentation. I generally think of documentation, Car, in three buckets: your food safety documentation, your food quality documentation, and those two should not be together.
And they so often do, but nope, they're siloed.
Separate them. And why? To your point, always explain the why. Why? Because FDA under FSMA has complete access to all of your food safety documentation, but that's all they have access to. That's their box. If you start including other information on that documentation for food safety, you're giving FDA carte blanche to look at all that stuff too. So food safety, food quality, and operational data. Well, what's operational data? Efficiencies, pounds per man hour, shift changes, downtime logs, all of these type of things that the plant manager is looking at to make sure the plant is working as good as it can. Very important, but it's not part of the quality management system. But keep it out.
Right. Absolutely. And obviously, and I know you always, in food safety, you always get kind of a bad rap, right? Like, well, you don't want us to produce. Obviously, we want you to produce. I mean, getting product out the door is the goal, right? But if the product isn't safe, or if it isn't good quality, that's going to have severe consequences for getting that out the door. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And your documentation is how you do that. And again, right, the other key point is if something does go wrong, how do you react to that? And this gets into that supervisor operator relationship. That's where that happens. Right?
Exactly.
If you have an operator who thinks his sole purpose in life is to get as much product out the door as possible, ticking time bomb. Something's going to happen. Or it's like, okay, well, let's just get through this shift and we'll let second shift worry about it. I don't like that supervisor on second shift. He's an SOB or right. And the problems just grow. And as the quality manager, you have no idea, right? You need to be in there, and the documentation is how you do that.
Absolutely.
So the next one is a big one, and verification and validation. Oh my goodness.
And this topic is, I know we just keep talking about it, right? All the time. And I think the biggest thing is to just understand the terms, the definitions. And the way that I always say it is validation is it the right thing to do? Verification is, do I say what I do, and do I do what I say? Yep. So my procedures are written and I'm performing them. And am I actually doing it the way that the procedures are written? Well, how do you write the procedures? You validate them. So you make sure that it's the right thing to do. And I feel like that, but I feel like even this week, those terms, sometimes people mix those up. Well, I'm going to validate my process when they're actually checking times and temperatures. It's like, that's not validation. not in the context that you're talking about it. Obviously, a process validation study is going to be different. That's going to be, we're going to try and figure out, okay, at what times and temperatures should we be running to control the hazards that we've identified. Right. Now, with that, we've identified those. That's validation. Verification, okay, that's our double checks, right? That's our double checks. And in sanitation, it's at what concentration of sanitizer do we need to be running in order to make sure that there's no micro present. That's our validation. Verification is, okay, now we got to keep running at that. Otherwise, we're going to be having an unsanitary environment.
So how do these work in terms of chemicals and verification and validation?
So validation, companies should be doing, and again, this is not, so the sanitation preventive controls, like you said in the intro, is sanitation preventive controls is one of our preventive controls if you identify it. Per the regulation, it is not mandated that you do a sanitation validation. Now, is it the right thing to do? It is. It is the right thing to do. The company itself actually needs to do that. So because it's the company's process, the company's product, and all of those things. And so what you do is you take some samples before production or after sanitation, or before sanitation, and then take some micro samples or ATP, things like that, after, to ensure that the process of the sanitation actually got the equipment clean. And so that's your validation. And there's lots of laboratories and things like that can help with doing that validation. As a chemical company, we can't do the validation for you because it's not our process and it's not our product. We can assist with chemical selection and things like that, but truly it's up to the customer, up to the manufacturer to do that. Now, verification, now you've got those parameters set. It's the time, temperature, action. They call it, there's a couple of different ways to think that it's called. There's either tact, time, action, chemical, and temperature, or we call it Sinner's circle. And I was just researching this. So Dr. Sinner was a researcher, I think it was in Germany, and he was working for a laundry company, and he came up with these parameters. So the time, temperature, chemical, and then mechanical action. And it's a circle. And you just think of those as each a pie, and a piece of the pie. And as you increase one, you decrease others. So if you increase temperature, you can possibly decrease time, or you can possibly decrease that chemical concentration. So it's called Sinner's circle, or a lot of people call it that TACT, TACT. And so that's what you're trying to define. But that's your verification. Validation is identifying what those parameters are. Verification is making sure that you're running at those temperatures and running at that time and running at that mechanical action.
Sinner's circle. Let me put this here in the comments. That's a good one. And that's what's so fun about these chats. Is like you had said earlier too, Cara, is if you learn one new thing, it's a win, right? Sinner's circle. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, he actually worked for a laundry company, and he was tasked with trying to figure out how to get laundry cleaner. And I thought that was interesting. It was like in the 50s, so it's been around for a while. So
So
I just feel like he doesn't get the credit, right? He needs some credit. He put some work into this. So
good job, Mr. Sinner. Good job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, part of this too, right, is sanitation. We don't want to go too far down this path, but I mean, looking at it from the standpoint of your CIP systems, your COP, right, clean out of place, your cleaning tanks, and then your hand cleaning as well, right? Is how you manage all these type of things. Plus, there's the different areas in plant, your floors, walls, ceilings, drains, all these type of things, right? Sanitation is extremely complicated, and you have to get it right. It has to be done right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Here's how I kind of think about verification and validation. So hopefully this will help somebody, is metal detection. So when you buy a metal detector, you hire a company and you figure out and you talk to technical people and you figure out the right model to buy. One of the things that you'll notice if you've been in more than one plant, metal detectors are all over the place, right? There's all kinds of different metal detectors, inline metal detectors, line metal detectors, all these type of things. And they all have to be correct for that purpose. And the aperture has to be correct. And you need to understand the belt speeds and the field strength and the product that's going through the metal detector and all these things. So you figure this out and you spec it out and you bring it in, and you just don't put it on the line and plug it in. You bring in a technician from the metal detector company. And what do? They validate that it works correctly. So they spend all day running test samples through, putting pieces of metal into different types of product and running it through the metal detector and running it through different points in the metal detector, because that magnetic field is different at different points in that aperture. And they figure out and they determine all the settings, and they go into those hidden screens with the passcodes, and then they punch in all the parameters. They give you those nice little wands, ferrous, non-ferrous, and metal, right? Stainless steel, sorry, with those correct size little detection balls that are the smallest size that metal detector can pick up. And he hands those to you and says, here you go.
Yeah.
Validated that it works. Now the verification then is the operator or whoever, quality online, going through and doing those checks every hour.
Yeah.
Verify that it's still working according to the plan that the technician set up.
Yeah. Do I say what I do, and do I do what I say? Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's my shorthand way of learning those type of things.
Yeah.
So the next area outside of verification and validation, then number 5 is training.
Yeah. And I think everybody on here probably has received and done training, right? So there's so many different aspects to it, and how people learn and all that.
Yes, and Austin with Sage Media, it spends a ton of time working on the psychology of how people learn, and so Austin does great work in that area. So I'll give him a shout out for that. Thank you, Austin.
Yes, I know Austin. That's awesome. Yeah.
So for me, training, Cara, breaks down into 2 main areas. There is training that are company wide. So let's say GMPs or biosecurity or lockout, tag out, or these type of things where everyone needs to know these things according to their particular job function. Great. The more important one, as we've been talking about indirectly here, is on the job training. So most of the training, 80% of the training, and this is where your success is in training, occurs on the floor. And that's between you and me. I'm the supervisor, you're the new employee. So Cara, welcome to ABC Food Company. Super glad you're here. I am going to be training you on how to run this machine. And you're like, oh, great, right? And so I'm showing you the ins and the outs and the do's and the don'ts and how you document things and how you wash your hands and what all these that's training.
Right.
And the supervisor needs to have a clear map of how that works. So in order for Cara to be trained, she needs to know how to set up this machine. She needs to know how to clear jams. She needs to know how to do weight checks. She needs to know how to check the date code. She needs to know how to check the product weights, all these type of things. And as a supervisor, I'm going check, right? And running you through those things. And at some point in time, I'm going to be looking at you and saying, okay, how are you doing? And, let's say that you've been doing this for a couple of weeks. And again, this goes back to the level of complexity. And I'm going to be running one of 3 things through my brain to evaluate you, right? Number 1 is, oh, hey, this new employee, Cara, she's doing great. She's super sharp. She's picking stuff up right away. I'm going to be able to let her run this line on her own, like next week. We'll see how she does. Number 2 is, okay, well, she's okay, right? I've had to repeat stuff a couple of times. She kind of gets it. She appears reliable, but I'm gonna have to supervise this person pretty closely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The third option is, oh my God,
like
Cara's a nightmare, right? She's fighting with the other employees. I think she stole someone's lunch out of the fridge today. 2 days ago, I think she might have been drunk, right? Whatever. And we have to, we got to cut bait here. She's not working out. This is not a good fit. We have to find somebody else, right? And training, it's going to be one of those 3 things. And there's going to be degrees, and all these things are going to vary, but that's always been a good model for me on how those things work relative to training.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the way that they learn, right? Some people need lots of written instruction. Some people like to actually do it, and then, or some people are really visual. They want to see a video or something like that. People learn, and I know Austin, like you said, does a lot of really awesome work on this. But how can you do it effectively?
Mm-hmm. And to your point earlier, and this was worth reiterating as well, is tell them why, right?
Yes.
Okay, here is how you clean the heater head that does the seals on the bag, right? And you need to keep a really close eye on this, because if you don't, here, let me show you what happens. Here's where some plastic has built up on this heater head. And now it's not sealing, right?
Right.
Here's an example I have that I can show you of an unsealed bag. Okay, now look at this. Can you see here? Can you see the gaps in there? What's going to happen? Air is going to get in, mold's going to start growing, and we're going to get complaints. You have to manage that.
Yeah.
That's the why.
That's the why. And it seems intuitive for a lot of people, but for some people that just isn't going to be where they're thinking. So yes, absolutely.
As a manager, right, you need to be evaluating, because people are people. And if you have a supervisor who's doing this training and he has the attitude of just do what I tell you to do,
right,
probably shouldn't be a supervisor.
Right. Exactly. I agree. 100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so an important lesson on that side as well is to always remember, but the supervisor is running the show.
Right.
That's where everything is controlled. It's not you, right? You're popping out on the floor every now and then and checking out things, but that supervisor operator relationship is the key to your success, and you need to be focusing on that.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Yes, that is the relationship, and the understanding the why, and yes, absolutely. It's so important.
Super important. So we did promise a bonus topic here for the 5. So we definitely have to get to the bonus topic, which is how to actually talk to an auditor, right? With all of these type of things. And we've been kind of dancing around the subject and talking about it here, but let's kind of talk about that a little bit too. So what are some of your key points there, Cara, on how to talk to an auditor?
I think the biggest point, and we talked about this in the pre-game here, don't argue, and just tell them what is asked. Don't go on and on and on and on, because that could trip you up, and that could lead to additional problems, right? Yeah. With the audit. And you don't give them the information and be honest. I think that is one of the key factors too. If you don't know, just say, I don't know, but I will find someone who does, or I will find the procedure that outlines this. So be honest, and don't argue. It's not worth it.
No, absolutely not. And also understand the scope of the audit, because auditors are people too. So make sure that the audit is staying within the scope of what you're looking at. So if you're doing an FDA audit, right, you're looking at as we talked about earlier, your food safety documentation, not your quality documentation, not your operational documentation, your food safety documentation. And you need to help that auditor understand that. They don't know your plants. Right. You need to be the ambassador and work with them. And to your point as well, Cara, is one of the things I always teach my quality managers, and this is a good one to remember for everybody here too, is answer exactly the question they are asking you, and then shut the hell up.
Yes. Do not babble. Do not babble. It is not worth it. Yeah. You're just opening cans of worms that need to stay closed.
Yeah. And FDA is actually trained in their investigator operations manual for silence, because they will do this technique. So if you're going through a serious issue, a class 1 recall or something like this, where the big guns are coming to your plant and it's just not a visit, they're there to investigate a failure. They're going to use these techniques. And one of those techniques is they will ask you a question, you'll give your answer, and then they'll just sit there and look at you.
Oh man.
Because they want you to ramble.
Right. Yeah. And probably the best way to approach that is, are there additional questions? Can I help you with anything else? Or just say, okay, that's the information, and remain silent.
Absolutely. And this is where Plan, Do, Check, Act comes in, right? So the auditor has a standard They ask a question for the standard. You show the procedure that meets the requirements of that standard. Then you show the proof, the recording form where you did what you said you did. And then if something went goofy, here's the corrective action you did to get it back on track. If you can follow that for everything that the auditor is asking you, they're going to love you.
It's going to be perfect. You'll get 100.
You'll do amazing. And that's the key to success right there.
100%. Agreed.
You know, how to talk to an auditor. I think this is a good topic to expand on for a future chat and to get more in this too, because we're just barely.
Absolutely. I would love you to have an auditor on to talk about their experiences and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. So unfortunately, guys, we're out of time already.
I know, it went so fast. It went so fast.
At the 30,000 foot level, what would you like people to take away from this?
Just, these are my experiences, right? And these are your experiences. Mm-hmm. I'm sure everybody has their own experiences, and I'd love to hear them, right? If you're willing to share, that would be amazing. But hopefully you gained at least one tidbit of, how to better your sanitation audit.
Right. And so as Austin says here too, create an opportunity for curiosity. Well said, right? So
very good.
People are curious. We all are. So that's a great comment to close on today. So thank you, Cara. Fantastic conversation. I wish we had more time.
Yeah,
you always had great guests.
Bryan. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate it as well. And again, on the Food Safety Chat database, all this information is going to be up there. And so I'll have that over there next week as well for the database. So everybody can access this, because we understand that it's, this is a hour of your week that you're investing with us. And we thank you for that. But sometimes the timing doesn't work out. And so you can go back to the database then and review all this information and pull those little nuggets out. So thanks everybody for that. Check out the database. Let me know what you think. So with that, we'll close our chat out for this week. With that, we'll see you back here next week at the same time. And yes, we will be here on Friday next week. So we'll be live streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll bring on another amazing food safety guest like Cara. So thanks, everybody. You did an amazing job. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll do it again next week. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cara. Enjoy your weekend as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a good one.